Hi, my name is Michelle Phoenix, and I'm a speech-language pathologist who's practiced clinically with young children about birth to 5 years old. I'm also an assistant professor in the School of Rehabilitation Science at McMaster University and with CanChild, and I'm proud to be a member of this research team. I was asked to provide a short video about how to set goals collaboratively with families using a family-centered model in telerehab practice. And I'm going to suggest it's not very different than what we would do in person or using a different model of therapy. Please keep in mind that I've done my best to combine both my own clinical experience with what we know from the evidence, but you can, of course, feel free to tailor any of these suggestions to your own clinical environment. I would begin by asking families about their big picture. So questions might be, what brings you in today? What's the most important thing? What's of concern to you and your family? A creative question that I've seen used is, if I had a magic wand, what would you want me to do with it? So what is the issue that we're trying to resolve here? That might give you an idea about what is of most priority to the family and where they want to focus their attention. Answers that I've gotten from families could be anything from, I really want my child to make a friend. So we might target social skills and social language. It could be something like, I really want my child's teacher to understand them. So maybe I know that we're working in the area of speech clarity. And of course, this is all going to be complementary to your own full assessment with the child. Sometimes you might get something like, I really want my child to sleep through the night. And you might have to reflect on whether or not that's within your own scope of practice and or if you can support the family in that goal area. So as an SLP, we might help families with bedtime routines and help the child to understand the expectations around bedtime. The next step we're going to address is, I call it breaking it down. So if we have these big things that might be quite far for where this child is right now, so making a friend might be really hard for a child who doesn't yet pay attention to other children in their environment, or being understood by an unfamiliar person, such as a new teacher, might be really hard for a child who has a very limited consonant repertoire. So you're going to use your own clinical knowledge and your clinical judgment to think about, if that's the long-term aim, what's our immediate next step to help get there? And you can share that information with families about where their child is at and where they can be going in some of the steps you might see in between. So for example, if you're trying to help a child make a friend, you might say that interacting with other children in the classroom and doing pretend play might be really hard given where they're at right now. But a common first early developmental stage for children is just to play side by side with another child. And maybe we recommend a sensory activity that can get the child used to being in close proximity to another child. Or if they're already there and you see that they're ready for something more, perhaps we're ready to work on turn taking, but not with a language-based activity. So they might start with kicking a soccer ball back and forth, for example. If we're working to build a consonant repertoire, you could give the family some information about what's an earlier, easier sound to start with, so something like a bilabial, versus what's a more difficult sound, so something like an S or an R might be hard to achieve early off. But we're not just the experts, the knowledge givers, etc. This really needs to be a bi-directional, reciprocal conversation with the family. So from there, we might try to personalize the target. So if we stick with those two kind of goal areas, to personalize the turn-taking activity, the family might tell you that soccer is not really a thing that their family's into, but the child, the client, has older sibs who love football. Could we instead do this by passing a football back and forth? And maybe the child has some physical limitations in a wheelchair, so tossing a football back and forth could work really well for that child. If we think about the speech sounds, we might go, okay, well, if we have b, and p that are really easy for children to get off of the bat, are there any words that you can think of that might be really highly motivating for your child that use those sounds at the beginning of the word? And the parent might say, yeah, they call their grandmother Mimi. And you recognize Mimi is a really great early target. It's got a simple structure. It's got like that is right there at the front of the word. You can work with the family to figure out how to create that as a goal. On the other hand, if the family says, oh yeah, my kid loves marshmallows, can we do marshmallow? You might then say, well, that's a longer word. It's got a lot of complex sounds. Maybe instead, when they eat the marshmallow, you can be working at, this tastes good, to try and get that M sound in there. So that's a couple of examples about how you might personalize a target. And from there, you're going to think about a personalized action plan. So we very often make some recommendations. We do some practice together, whether we're online or in person. And there's a hope that a family would continue to work on these things between sessions. So to personalize that action plan, if we go back to the turn taking and throwing the football, then the family might say, if you ask them, what's a good time for practicing this activity at home? And they might say, oh, we're out at the football field like 4 times a week between practices and games for the older sibs. And, he usually sits on the sidelines watching. And you can say, well, that would be a great opportunity with another child on the sidelines or a sibling or a parent to work at passing that ball back and forth and see if you can get that turn-taking structure going. So then you've got 4 practices in a week. That's great. Alternately, for the Mimi, for practicing that sound, you might suggest that they look at the photo album together every night before bed, and they say night night Mimi in all of the pictures of grandma, so they get some good loaded practice in there. You can talk to families about the importance of loading up the practice. Alternately, if they say, well, Mimi drops our kids to school every day, well, then maybe that's a great time to do bye Mimi, and the child doesn't necessarily have to combine those words, but they get a turn to say Mimi, and they do it a couple of times over. So these are maybe some basic examples that you could use or you can alter depending on the age of your client. So if it's an older client, the family's big picture might be really about the client's own area that they really want to work at. Depending on the environment that you're consulting to, you could do daycare-based goals or home-based goals, for example. If you have any questions or you'd like to follow up, my name again is Michelle Phoenix, and you're welcome to email me at PHOENIMP@mcmaster.ca. Thanks so much. Take care.